DICE have shifted focus from their two main live service projects, namely Battlefield 5 and Battlefront 2, towards the new and upcoming Battlefield game set to launch in late 2021. This is probably the case for a number of reasons, but probably can be boiled down to two main points. According to people who followed the game way more than me, Battlefield 5 has not been DICE's greatest attempt at a Battlefield game in a long time. Thus, the brand has taken some damage over its years, and it needs some repairs that can be delivered in form of an excellent entry into the franchise. The other reason to shift focus away from Battlefront has more to do with timing. As far as we can tell, there's been no plans for a third entry into the Battlefront franchise. Thus, production can only start from right now, mid-2020, and continue from there. The reason the timing doesn't work here is because EA, DICE's parent company, has an exclusivity license to produce HD Star Wars games that is set to expire in 2023. If DICE were to start developing Battlefront 3 and make it as good as possible, a realistic release date would be late 2022 to mid 2023. This would be way too close to the expiration and possibly negotiation date between EA and Disney, the owner of Star Wars, that has no guarantee of renewal. If the deal isn't renewed, there is a possibility DICE would not be able to support any of their Star Wars games, and potentially losing that is too big of a risk to release a new Star Wars game so close to license expiration. Therefore, with everything coming together, it seems as if DICE are full steam ahead in creating the new Battlefield. I'm sure DICE and their fans of Battlefield can impart lessons they can learn from Battlefield 5 onto the project on that side. However, considering the major turnaround and success of Battlefront 2, advice from this side can be very helpful to incorporate into the next game, especially because support was cancelled in order to support the development of it, and the fact that DICE's actions restored and boosted the goodwill of Star Wars games with similar actions. That being said, let's get into the lessons that can be learned. The first point is a crucial component of a successful live service, and that is to listen to the community. DICE were tied down early on in Battlefront 2's life cycle, needing to meet obligations of fixing the progression systems and delivering movie solo related content. This was an incredibly frustrating time, as the community that stayed were, rather loudly, requesting Clone Wars era content. Once DICE were free of obligations, they got right into working on said content, and the announcement and subsequent delivery of it sparked the turnaround and the best times for the game. Prosperity continued to rise as more community suggestions were implemented in unique DICE ways, and the success eventually attracted new players, and the game earned a new reputation that was overwhelmingly positive. Now, of course, DICE had hinted at implementing community suggestions very early on when they were still tied down. It's not as if they just woke up one day and stumbled upon their success and decided to stay with it, but rather that the collaborative effort was always there and just had to be adjusted after the disastrous launch. Similarly, some of the best content added were total surprises that the majority of the community did not expect or suggest. Original content can be great, so the dogma of only following community suggestions can be harmful. As with most things, there is a good balance to strike, and if that balance is weighted more in favor of the community, it can lead to great things, as shown by Battlefront 2. The second point to hit on here is that DICE should use the actual game for advertising purposes. They did this with Battlefront 2 in a more honest way than Battlefront 2015, and, from what I've heard, much more than Battlefield 5.
The reveal trailer was created on a different looking Twisted Steel map, using assets clearly created for the sole purpose of marketing the game and making the trailer look as flashy as possible. And of course, it did catch the attention of lots of people, but perhaps for completely the wrong reasons. None of the characters used in the trailers, at least I don't think so, have made it into the final game. The plane crashing animations, the garrote wire takedown animations, the shushing soldier, the list goes on. None of those things came to Battlefield 5. Clearly the trailer was made without emphasis on any of that making it into the game.
In the gameplay reveal trailer from E3, DICE brought in Game Changers, representatives from the community, to help film the trailer. This produced an honest glimpse into what the on-the-ground action would look like, and was immediately followed by a couple hours later by an actual full-length match on the same map the trailer was filmed on. While the first Battlefront trailer was filmed using the actual game, the actions taken was so drastically different from what actual players would end up doing One example includes players attacking only one AT-AT, so it could be taken down mid-match with mechanics, by the way, that were changed before launch, such as the timing of snow speeder tokens and the AT-AT health threshold needed for takedown. Another example being a starfighter chase through the trenches on the edge of the map where players were unlikely to be flying.
But that's what DICE does. They make these awesome gameplay trailers, where the most exciting, most cinematic match of all time happens and nobody gets kicked out by Punkbuster. The real game will not be anywhere near as exciting as this.
Battlefield and Battlefront can often provide some of the most intense moments among FPS titles, so there's no need to be deceptive. I'm not opposed to a little build up and some strategic cuts, but the closer you can ground it to actual gameplay, the better it will be received. The third lesson to take from Battlefront 2 is that the game can be saved post any misfortunes it may experience at any time in its life cycle. With Battlefront 2, the two biggest problems followed each other and came right after launch. First was the progression system and the loot box controversy the game launched with, and after that followed terrible communication regarding post-launch content. Both caused high tensions in the community and left the game in less than an ideal state. What must have been crushing for DICE though is that when the entire progression system was overhauled, there were still major complaints about communication and content. I imagine it must have been tempting to throw in the towel, but nonetheless they persisted. And finally, after a new community manager and the Clone Wars reveal, the game started to turn around and embark on the journey to the good standing it has now. The lesson of not giving up and persisting through hard times is one we're all given as we grow up. But that is because it can work. DICE will hopefully look back at during any hard times in this next Battlefield game and remember what they managed to accomplish with Battlefront and use that as motivations to keep pressing forward to deliver great experiences. Next point, communication is king. With Battlefront, this was made more clearer than ever. The difficult times were marred with terrible communication, and this soon became the main issue plaguing the game. Players were always thirsty for information, and keeping them informed with regular updates is the best way to keep them calm. This is the case so much that the CT-WEN, a reference to the communication blog post, became its own meme in the community. It seems Battlefield has a good track record of this, but it could be improved to the level of Battlefront CT to continue that also good communication. The final point is one that is very important. Cut out the toxic elements if you're listening to the community. Great strides were taken by the community team to identify and cut out toxic elements and traits of the community, not only on social forums but in-game. The community surveys helped tremendously and helped to ease players, knowing that any potential issues were being taken care of. Toxic members and even creators were not allowed to undermine others without punishment for them and support for the victims. These were great moves that allowed the community to grow and flourish without bad actors bringing down the atmosphere. I would even say this was done so well, some might not have even noticed it was being done at all. Now, we certainly had less toxic elements during better periods of this game, so producing great content and communication is, in kind of a strange way, another to combat toxicity. Battlefield has in the past had extremely toxic elements that simple methods have failed to combat. Thus, the processes of dealing with these elements will need to be ramped up compared to Battlefront. Harsher methods of punishment and more promotion of cleaner elements is almost definitely required. As EA and DICE have stated and continue to state, gaming is for all players of all different backgrounds, and thus making the Battlefield community as comforting as Battlefront is required. Battlefront has produced so many wholesome sub-communities that different people of different backgrounds can feel comfortable in, which is something I don't think the Battlefield community currently offers, and I know definitely didn't offer at the launch of Battlefield 5. The various lessons that DICE could take away from its journey with Battlefront 2 could inspire a Battlefield that could be one of the best yet. The turnaround of the game is already going down as one of the greatest comebacks in recent video game history. DICE have left Battlefront and its broader community and sub-communities in a great state and have all the means and potential to bring the same energy to the next game, which it seems is their only focus at the moment. Hopefully DICE can use everything they have learned from the past 3 years and from suggestions they have taken in during this time to produce an absolutely stunning game.